Well, good morning to everybody out on the West Coast. Good afternoon to everybody here on the East Coast, and howdy y'all to everybody in the Midwest. Welcome to the inaugural edition, the very first ever Asterisk Tech Tips, a new, we're hoping bi-weekly webinar series where we tell people a little bit about what kinds of interesting things they can do with Asterisk, and then we take some time to answer their questions. So we've got so far almost 60 people in the room. We're expecting a few more, so we're going to kind of give a couple more minutes for people to sort of amble in, find their seats, get a soda, all the normal sort of stuff you do when you go to a webinar, and then we'll be rolling. So hang on, and we'll be talking about Google here in just a sec. While we're kind of waiting to get started, let me kind of explain the way things work. We've got a presentation that starts out. Malcolm Davenport, the Senior Product Manager for Asterisk and Asterisk SCF here at Digium, has put together an awesome presentation, which will take, I guess the first 30 or 40 minutes of the time we've got, and then we open things up and we let people ask questions. So if you've got just general Asterisk questions, or if you've got questions about Google and what you can do with Google calling, feel free to ask those. We're going to ask everybody to ask the questions using the questions box that's built into the GoToWebinar control panel here. And we will read your question off and then let either Malcolm, myself, or any of the other panel of experts we've got here, Brian Johns, take part in answering those questions. So thank you again for joining us. And we'll give just another few seconds, and then I will turn it over to Malcolm and tell him to take it away. Looks like we've still got people shuffling through the digital door. Just 62. Well, all right. I think the rush has slowed down, so I guess Malcolm is probably now a good time to start.
All right, away we go. Howdy, my name is Malcolm Davenport, and I'm the Senior Product Manager here for Digium. As Steve said, I work with open source software, which includes both Asterisk and Asterisk SCF. And today we're going to talk about Asterisk and how it can be used to make some calls with Google. So first, let's talk about what version of Asterisk you're going to need to connect Asterisk to Google. We've currently got 3 supported versions of Asterisk. That's Asterisk 1.4, 1.6.2, and version 1.8. In order to connect Asterisk to Google, you're going to need to be using 1.8. Neither 1.4 or any version of 1.6 will do. You must be using 1.8. Additionally, you're going to need to be using version 1.8.1.1 or greater, which means that most people wanting to do a new installation should just go with the latest version, which right now is 1.8.2.4. We've also got to worry about some software dependencies. So for your Linux system, before you build Asterisk, make sure that you've installed both the OpenSSL development libraries and the XML libraries before you configure and install Asterisk. If you don't do that, you're going to run into some really weird errors. All right. So normally, we just wait for everybody to compile, and then we proceed, but we don't have enough time, so let's get going. Now, Google has 2 separate calling services that they offer, Google Talk and Google Voice. First, we're going to talk about Google Talk. Google Talk is what you get inside of your Gmail client. When you decide to chat someone up, there's a voice calling option and a link that says Call Computer. When you hit that link, you get a voice call from your web browser to the other person's web browser. So it's sort of like making a Skype call, only you're doing it inside of your web browser instead of doing it in a separate application. So I can call anybody on my approved chat list whenever they're online. Pretty handy, right? All right, what about Google Voice? Well, Google Voice extends the power of Google Talk by letting you make and receive phone calls with the regular PSTN. Google gives you a free phone number, and you can configure Google Voice to forward any calls made to that number over your mobile phone or another number. You can also use Google Voice to make outbound calls to regular PSTN numbers. So what's interesting about Google Voice? Well, through the calendar year of 2011, at least so far as they've announced, inbound and outbound calling with Google Voice is free for United States domestic numbers. That means it's a free VoIP trunk. You've still got to pay for any international calling you want to do, but free domestic calling is a pretty great deal. All right, so where's Asterisk in all of this? Well, right now you've probably got your Asterisk server connected to a SIP phone of some kind, right? And Asterisk talks to your phone, of course, using SIP. And you probably also have Asterisk connected to some kind of VoIP provider. And to make the connection to that VoIP provider, you're also probably using SIP. But Google doesn't use SIP. Instead, they use something called Jingle, which is a customized version of XMPP, which used to be known as Jabber. It's a complicated lineage, so we're just going to refer to it from here on out as XMPP. Now, XMPP is the messaging protocol supported by chat servers like eJabberD and OpenFire. And just like SIP, XMPP is a messaging protocol. Unlike SIP, it's designed to be a general-purpose messaging protocol. So besides being used for chat servers, it can also be used for VoIP servers. Let's go back to that last picture. Asterisk 1.8 talks to Google just like it's any other VoIP provider, only instead of using SIP, it uses XMPP instead. All right, let's look at how we configure Asterisk to connect to Google using XMPP. Now, if you're configuring a SIP provider or endpoint to use with Asterisk, you edit one file, sip.conf. If you're going to configure Asterisk to talk to Google, you need to edit two files. Well, three if you count the dial plan. Those two files are jabber.conf and gtalk.conf. First, we're going to look at configuring gtalk.conf. Okay. For connecting to Google, we need two sections, a general section and a guest section. The general section defines a number of things. Context defines the Asterisk dial plan context where unmatched calls will go. Next, we set allow guests to yes because inbound Google voice calls could come in from someone we haven't otherwise defined an extension for. Next, we define the local IP address that we want to bind to. Note, we only support IPv4 addressing for Google Talk, not IPv6 addresses like Asterisk does for SIP. So you can't bind to an IPv6 address. Then we optionally define our external IP address if we're behind NAT. It's okay to define this even if we're not behind NAT, so long as it's our public-facing IPv4 address. All right, let's move on to the guest context. Here, our first two lines control our codec allowances. Google Talk supports a number of different codecs, but calls from Google Voice are always going to come in using G.711 MUL. So we need to set that here as our preferred codec. Next, we're going to define the context that we want guest calls going into. And finally, we define which connection guest calls from Google come in over. Now, remember this for later because we're going to use this in our XMPP configuration. So this is a basic gtalk configuration file for Asterisk. All right, we're not done yet. We're still going to have to configure Asterisk's XMPP Jabber component to connect to Google. Let's do that. All right, here's our jabber.conf file. Just like our gtalk configuration file, we need two sections. The general section only needs one thing, auto-register. Set that to yes. Now, remember from the last slide in our gtalk configuration file where we used the option connection and we called it Asterisk? Here's where that comes into play. The second section of this file will have the same name as the connection from our gtalk.conf file. So in this case, we call it Asterisk. In the connection-specific section that we just defined, we define a type, and that's going to be client. Then we define the host that we want to connect to. It's going to be talk.google.com. We set our username at gmail.com and the XMPP resource, which in this case is just called talk. And then we'll set our password, something like my super secret. All right. After that, we need two parameters that Google requires for security: use TLS and use SASL. Set both of those to yes. All right. Finally, we'll go ahead and we'll set a status message so that when other Google users see us on their chat panels, it's going to tell everybody that we're actually an Asterisk server. Okay. Now let's talk about dial plan. We want to know how to get calls in and out of Asterisk over Google. So this is what it looks like. For incoming calls, look at the Google inbound context. Here, we're going to match on any otherwise unmatched any incoming call, and we're going to send it to dial a SIP phone that's registered as Malcolm. Notice that we're going to do a 20-second dial time out there, and we're going to use the D option. Let's talk about that. Google has an option for screening Google Voice calls, so that when a user calls you, Google asks you to press 1 to accept the call. Now, Google also has an option to record your voicemail, transcribe it into text, and then email it to you. Now, the incoming line of dial plan that we've set here tells Asterisk to hold off on answering that call until Malcolm answers his SIP phone. And if I do, then Asterisk sends back a DTMF event 1 to Google to tell them to accept the call. If I don't answer in 20 seconds, Google's going to push the call to Google's voicemail service. The next context, the local context, is one we're using for our outbound calls from Google. The first example is for extension 300. Now, when somebody dials 300, we call the dial application with the technology type of gtalk. So unlike calling a SIP peer or an EX peer or a DOTI device, we're calling a gtalk device. We then pass some parameters to the gtalk technology. First, we pass the connection we want to use, Asterisk, which is what we defined earlier. Then we tell the connection who we want to call. In this case, it's steven.sokol@gmail.com. So if I dial 300 right now from a phone connected to Asterisk that was in that local context, it would call Steven Sokol. The next example in the outbound context is a pattern match for sending calls out to the PSTN using Google Voice. Here, we've got a pattern match that looks for 1 followed by 9 more digits. We then call the dial application, use the technology gtalk and the connection Asterisk. Then we pass a plus character followed by the dialed extension at voice.google.com. So if I dial 1-256-428-6000 right now, it'll call Digium's main number. All right. All of that sounds really nice, but it's fun to see things working too. So we're going to try to make some calls, and this is a little bit dangerous because we are in the middle of a presentation. So we're going to bust out of this, and here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at a Gmail client here. We've got Digium test, and we've got a SIP phone right here that's talking to Asterisk. So I am going to dial into this gtalk account. So I set up an extension for it. It's extension, let's see, 302. So we'll go ahead and dial that from our SIP phone. And we're going to see it show up right here inside of our Google Chat window. So we can answer that, hello, and then there's going to be some really horrible echo there because it's just me talking to myself and you guys as well. All right, now we can also go the other way. So we've got this contact here. We can hit the voice calling button, the call computer button, and then the call comes into our SIP phone. Hello, and again, really horrible echo because I'm just talking to myself. So that's inbound and outbound calling through gtalk inside of the web browser. Pretty neat. All right, so let's try some calling with Google Voice. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call ourselves from the PSTN. I've got another phone right here that's going to dial. There's the call. Hello. Hello. And more horrible echo. So it's an inbound call from the PSTN that you can see there. And if anybody's got a phone number that they'd like us to dial, just so we can call them right here, they can go ahead and put that into a question, and then we can dial that number. Or into the chat panel. Okay, there is a number. All right. The first number comes from, let's see, Mr. Ward Mundy. So we will call him first. And again, there's going to be some really horrible echo, but we'll call. Hello, Mr. Mundy.
How are you?
Very well. How are you?
All well.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So now we just made inbound and outbound calling through Google Voice and through Google Talk. Let's step back into the presentation. All right. Now, you may have noticed something. It wasn't a unicorn, but if you were paying attention, you saw some really interesting caller ID when we made some calls to our SIP client, right? Let's roll the tape back and see what happened. All right, so here's what our client saw when it received the call from Google Voice. We get this really crazy incoming caller ID string, right? It's the 10-digit phone number at voice.google.com/all kinds of madness. Now, in this case, Blink, our client, was capable of handling it. But for some clients, we've tried SIPDroid, it's just too much, and the client actually crashes with a crazy caller ID string like this. So we're going to use some Asterisk dial plan magic to make the caller ID a little bit more friendly. Now, you remember our inbound context from before, right? Let's see how we can use the cut function to trim things up so that our client is a little bit happier. Here, we're going to set the caller ID name field to a new variable called Crazy Google CID. And then we're going to create a new variable called normal ID, normal caller ID. And we're going to use the cut function on Crazy Google CID to cut everything on the left side of the at character. And then we're going to take the contents of this new normal caller ID variable, and we'll set it to the channel caller ID variable that we're going to use before we dial our SIP phone. So this means that our caller ID is going to look like this, a little bit better, right? That's a friendly one. You can deal with that. Now, most of the time when you talk to customers, they're not talking to you about gardening or about unicorns. Instead, they're usually asking you to perform some kind of magical feat. And since we're not magicians, we don't do magic, but we do like to have fun. So you remember the Google Talk web client, right? Remember how you've only got a button that says call computer. There aren't any DTMF keys, so I can't press 1 or pound or anything like that. All I've got is this text interface. So we don't have IVR, right? Instead we have interactive voice with text response. A brand new acronym for an industry full of them. No, not really. All right, but let's see what we can do with Asterisk to traverse IVR when you don't have a DTMF dial pad. And it's going to require a little change for me over here, so bear with me for just a moment. I'm reconfiguring the Asterisk server that we are talking to. All right, and we're going to step out of the PowerPoint again, and we're going to go back to our browser. So now we're going to call this user again.
If you know the extension of the party you wish to reach, dial it now.
And it's also going to prompt us with some text. So we could punch in an extension.
Sorry, that's not a valid extension.
Oh, we put in the wrong one.
Again.
Let's put in one that actually works. So there we go. Getting a call from myself, and the horrible echo that will just make go away. All right. So that's pretty fun. All right, how did we do it? Well, we'll start with our inbound context from before with our caller ID gardening goodness. We've got some new lines, though. First, we're going to call the background application, and we're going to play back a file called if you know extend dial. Immediately following that, we're going to use the send text application to send some text to the client. Then we're going to create a new variable called user choice. And into that variable, we're going to pass the results of the Java receive function called on the Asterisk connection to Google, and we're going to receive it from the calling buddy. To do that, we need to use the caller ID name function and strip off the last 15 characters because that's the number that Google appends. Finally, we've got a 5-second timeout there for the caller to enter which extension they want to talk to. And then we take our new user choice and we do a go-to in the current context to whatever extension that the caller punched in. In this case, we've got an extension we built for 100, which styles the SIP client Malcolm. Clear as mud, right? Well, if it's not, or you want more help, or you want to get the configs that we use today to make this happen, we've got a wiki page for you over on the Asterisk wiki. So go to the Asterisk wiki at wiki.asterisk.org, then in the search box type calling in Google, and it'll take you right to the article. Stop the presses. Now, there was a really great message board thread that got started on Tuesday, and it was called Google Voice in Flames. And this thread came up because it seems Google's been making some changes to Google Voice. Now, the whole bit about sending the DTMF1 event to Google to accept the call seems to be a little bit persnippety or particular with its timing. So you remember our slide from earlier about dealing with incoming calls, right? This works just fine for sending a call directly to a phone most of the time. But most people don't do that. They send the call to an IVR or a queue or a voicemail or something like that. That means that they're going to need to add, in many cases, something like this. Here we're going to answer the call. Now, this means that we're going to be able to pass media to it from now on, so we can do applications other than just dialing a phone. And then next we're going to wait a bit. And this seems to be the key for a lot of people, the wait. All right? People have found out that if they don't wait, if they instead just immediately send the DTMF event back, that Google doesn't accept it. So after that, after the wait, we send a DTMF event 1, and then we can go about our business. Now, for the people that are having problems, they end up getting hung up on when they're talking to Google because the 1 is not received. And this seems to be very particular. With some people, they never experience this and don't need this. With other people, they need this. Other people need to send 2 1s back to Google. So we're still trying to get our heads around what's going on. And since the documentation doesn't really exist for all of this, it's a bit of a mystery. So we're exploring. Okay. Now, you remember this slide from earlier, right? The one about Google loving XMPP. Well, it turns out that Google also loves SIP, but there's a catch. Google only loves SIP sometimes. So when Google does love SIP on whatever day of the week or phase of the moon that it is, you can dial direct to Google Voice numbers using the host sip.voice.google.com. But it doesn't work right now, at least as far as I know. I haven't tried it in the last 5 minutes. So until such time as Google actually officially supports this, or at least kind of tacitly approves of it but not breaking it all the time, nobody would recommend that you actually use it other than just for experimentation. All right, this is all terribly exciting, right? The community has been heavily involved in testing and reporting issues with Google Voice. The community has also been involved in contributing patches to further the capability of Asterisk's Google connectivity. In fact, there's a patch on the issue tracker right now that will allow you to set your Google status as invisible. What does that mean? Well, let's try it. If I can get my mouse. There we go. Okay. So we're going to call this user.
You know the extension of the party you wish to reach, dial it now.
Tell it magic. Okay, so we send it Jabber set invisible on Asterisk. And so now you can see that the user is gone. So we can't call it, we can't do anything with it. So we've basically just taken it offline. All right, let's go back to the presentation and talk about that. So here's some dial plans showing how that works. Now this is also a little bit more complicated because you can see down there I've got an invalid extension, and that just is an error handler in case somebody punches in the wrong thing. So in the first block here, we send the user some text. If you know the extension of the party you wish to reach, dial it now. Then we're creating the new variable user choice, and we put the results in the Jabber receive function, just like before, and then we're going to do a go to. Now, in this case, unlike the last example, I typed magic. So I've created an extension called magic, and here I send some more text. Welcome to the magic menu. Please enter your desire. Create an extension, or create a new variable called magic command that also uses the Jabber receive function. And then I use that variable in combination with the system command to execute the invisible command on the Asterisk CLI. And then we send some more text and we hang up. All right? So that's not a practical way to mark your Asterisk server invisible, since you can't use the same method to mark it visible, right? Google won't let you call invisible users or send them chat messages. So at that point, I can't reach the server anymore. Now, on the other hand, you're probably going to use the invisible capability from a cron job or from some script that you've got that connects to the Asterisk Manager interface. Or maybe you want to tie it into a speed dial button on your phone. Maybe if you're a business, you set yourself invisible during non-business hours and then set your visibility to on during regular business hours. So we're just talking about presence here. The usages get pretty creative. Now, to handle invisibility, you're going to need a patch because it's not yet part of Asterisk. So if you want that feature now, before it's found its way into a released version of Asterisk, go to the Asterisk issue tracker, look up issue number 18727, download the patch, apply it, and try it out. Now, we're almost to the end of the PowerPoint, but before we get there, there's just one more thing. Okay, I don't have any MacBook Airs lying around or hiding or anything like that, but I do want to show you something that I think is really fun. It's how we can get Google to send an SMS message to our mobile phones whenever somebody leaves us a voicemail. Now, a little bit of infrastructure here. First, we should tell Asterisk not to record a voicemail message for our user unless somebody actually leaves a real one, right? Not everybody who calls leaves a voicemail message that's anything other than them hanging up. So we don't want to get an SMS every time somebody calls us, right? Because Asterisk is going to roll over to voicemail and the caller is going to hang up before they leave. So we set min message equals some value. In this case, 5, and that's 5 seconds. And we also need to make sure that we've got a voicemail account set up for the phone in question. In this case, it's for the phone, in this case, it's account 1000 for me. Then in SIP.com, we're going to need to make sure that our peer entry for the SIP phone actually defines a mailbox. So 1000 at default. It's the same one we define in voicemail.com. Okay, these are not complete configuration examples, right? It's just the stuff we want to make sure is in there for this example. Okay, next we're going to install a really handy utility called PY Google Voice. It provides Python bindings to the Google Voice API. So assuming that you're running Ubuntu, and I did this from Ubuntu 10.10, you can install it from the CLI by typing apt-get install python-pip, and then easy_install PY Google Voice. What we're going to end up with is a command line utility called gvoice. It's stored in user local bin. Okay, Now we're going to need some dial plan foo to make this work. Now, you remember our Google inbound chat context from before. All right, here are the important parts of it. First, we're going to change extension 100 so it goes to a new context called Google Inbound Voicemail. And really, there'd probably be a specific one for that extension. It's just for convenience. Now, in this new context, we'll dial the SIP phone just like normal. If I don't answer for 20 seconds, then we're going to send the call to the voicemail application and put it into mailbox 1000 at default. Here's where things get interesting. We're going to use the H extension, which is the hang-up extension. So when the calling party hangs up, the Asterisk dial plan begins executing whatever the H extension says to do. So after a no-op, we're going to call the GoToIf application on the VM message file channel variable. And if you want to know more about the channel variables, you can go to the Asterisk wiki. If the variable is not equal to null, we go to a label in the current extension handler called yesVM. If the variable is equal to null, then we go to a label in the current extension handler called noVM. So if the caller left a voicemail that's less than 5 seconds, Asterisk won't record a voicemail, so the VM message file channel variable will be null. Thus, the dial plan will jump to the noVM label, and that just calls a no-op and then continues on to a hang-up. But if the caller left a voicemail that's 5 seconds or longer, then this channel variable will contain the path to the file, meaning that it's not null. So there's a voicemail and will proceed to the system command. The system command here calls the gvoice command line application and is going to pass some parameters to it. -E is going to pass your Google account name. -P, send your password. Send SMS is the command. Then to the send SMS command, we're going to send the phone number we want to deliver the SMS to, and this is going to be in the same format that we use when we're dialing out Google Voice, so that's the plus character followed by 10 digits. And then finally, the short message that we actually want to send. Okay? After Asterisk hangs up, a few seconds later, you're going to get your nice, shiny SMS message from Google telling you that there's a voicemail waiting on Asterisk for you. You know, I'm getting kind of tired. Must be running low on tiger blood or something. And that probably means that we're close to the end. So I hope it's been useful, that you've learned something, that you'll rush out and start experimenting and contributing. And if it hasn't been any of those, then maybe at the very least it's been entertaining. So I thank you for your attention, and the floor is now open for questions, comments, applause, or tomatoes. There's a question about whether the session is being recorded and is available online. I think the answer to that is yes. I do not have the details, but either Steve or Julie will have those. Question from someone using Switchbox SMB and only its web interface for configuration. Is it possible to do the configuration that was here, or do we need to get on the box and configure files as you were showing? You cannot do this using Switchbox because Switchbox is not built on top of Asterisk 1.8. So everything I showed you here is all dependent upon Asterisk 1.8. So if you wanted to somehow hook Switchbox into doing any of these sorts of things, you'd have to go from Switchbox across SIP to an Asterisk server running Asterisk 1.8 that had been configured to talk to Google.
And Digi would, of course, be happy to sell you everything that you need.
We have another question. Can you send out the PowerPoint? We will have all the information available on the wiki page at some point after the presentation. So last-minute changes, right? I couldn't get it uploaded in time. All right. Let's see. The question about does Google limit the simultaneous outbound channels? And the answer to that is I don't know. We have not tried to load test Google because since they are providing us with this lovely free service, we don't want to abuse it in any way. And there are points in their terms and conditions as part of your user account sign-up that prohibit you from using the service in a way that impacts anybody else's use of the service. So if you try to abuse it, you're probably running afoul of the terms and conditions, and they're probably going to shut your account down. Question, why would you ever use PowerPoint as opposed to the more awesome Keynote? PowerPoint is what I happen to have, and I was actually discussing this with someone earlier. I'm using the presenter view in PowerPoint, and it's not nearly as good, even though 2011 is an improvement over 2008, as the presenter view in Keynote. Keynote's a really great application, but I don't have them. Is this presentation available somewhere? We'll have it up on the wiki. Let's see. Thank you. Presentation. Question from Ward, do we no longer need KeepAlive equals yes in Jabber.com? I have never had a problem with setting KeepAlive equals yes because Google is, I think that's more useful for connections that you're creating to other XMPP services. With Google, I'm always getting traffic from them, incoming messages that are status related. So somebody requests my presence because they're sitting in their browser also. So I've had this connection up using this configuration for weeks without the KeepAlive equals yes. All right. Another one about concurrent calls. One about sip.voice.google.com. Wanting to know if it's going to be ready within the week. The answer to that is I don't know. Perhaps someone from Google is attending this and they're going to turn it on. Perhaps they're going to shut all of this down and make us all use SIP. Who knows? They have not been public about what exactly they're doing with sip.voice.google.com or SIP connectivity to Google Voice or Google Talk in general. Question about repeating the required software versions again. So 1.4, no. 1.6, anything, no. 1.8, yes. But it needs to be at least 1.8.1.1. So what that means is you should really just go get the current version of 1.8, which right now I think is 1.8.3.4. I can't remember exactly. Just get the current version of 1.8, you'll be okay. Question, will Gtalk and Jabber be included in Asterisk Now distribution? So that is something that we have talked about, but we've kind of been waiting on incorporating some components into the Asterisk GUI project itself. Aside of that, you should be able to install those with, if you're just using free PBX or something like that, you should, or even the Asterisk GUI itself, you should be able to install libxml or the OpenSSL development libraries and move on from there. But I don't know if the RPM distribution of Asterisk includes the ResJabber resource. So ResJabber is actually the resource used by Asterisk in the Chan Gtalk. I don't know if those are included or not. So you can actually direct that question to Rod Montgomery here at Digium. It's rmontgomery@digium.com. Is there a way to set up a Magic Jack on Asterisk? I do not know the answer to that. I'm not sure what it speaks. If it just talks SIP and you can configure SIP credentials and point it at a host, then Asterisk could be that thing that it's talking to. But if you can't do any of those things, meaning that they lock you out from doing it or it's just not possible otherwise, then the answer is probably no, or that it's just going to be too difficult.
It can be done, but unfortunately you can't do it the way you should, which would be to simply log into your to the account that they set up for you on magicjack.com. Instead, you basically have to have some kind of analog interface card, an FXO port, and you run out and back in. And even that's kind of dodgy because I don't think that they're actually sending reliable disconnect. So the answer is technically, yeah, you can make it sort of work, but you probably don't want to try.
All right. What is the equivalent ABE version that would support this? Well, right now there is no ABE version that supports this because all of the ABE versions that exist are version 1.4, and again, all of this only exists in Asterisk 1.8. So if there were any version of ABE that was based on 1.8, it would support this, but I don't think ABE is sold as a retail product any longer. So I don't know that there's any availability for existing ABE customers to upgrade anything that supports this. Is it possible to manage several Google Voice identities? The answer to that is yes. I did not do that in this presentation because it was just going to be a little bit too complicated for me with multiple web browsers and everything like that. But yeah, you can. And in all the places where I'm just sending the call to extend S right to the unmatched extension, you can also send it directly to your Gmail account name. So those inbound calls, they really come to digiumtest2011@gmail.com, right? And then you can handle the extension like that. You don't have to handle it as an S extension. I just did that for simplicity's sake here in the presentation. What about with other XMPP clients? So Asterisk is not a great, it's not a Jabber server. So we're just a client also that's connecting to other Jabber services, and specifically with Google, we're just connecting to them, just like the web client does. I don't know if you can connect other XMPP clients up to Google Voice or Google Talk or not. That's not something that we've ever attempted or experimented with. It says in TrixBox we can use the IVR, then we can dial any extension. Can we do it also here? I am not that familiar with the configuration of TrixBox, but you can get the call into the Asterisk dial plan and then route it from there. Now, if you're going to do that, remember you're going to want to answer the call, and you're going to want to send Google that DTMF event of 1. Let's see. Question, if the external IP is not available, then how can we handle? Well, if you're behind NAT, then you're really going to want to figure out a way to plug in your external IP address into the configuration here. Otherwise, you're not going to get bidirectional audio. All right, let's see. Link to the webinar notes available online. Yep, stuff will be up on the wiki. Something about the fixed IP. I think that relates to an earlier one. They're not able to get the fixed IP address. You should know the okay, so I guess you're trying to run this behind behind some sort of dynamic connection that changes IP addresses frequently. If you're doing that, you can find out what your external address is. You know what it is. It shouldn't change that frequently. It shouldn't change more than once a month or something like that. If it really does change all the time, like with every single connection, you're constantly dropping connection, reconnecting over an ADSL circuit or something like that, and every single time that happens to give you a brand new IP, then you might want to write a script that goes out, pings an external web service out there, finds out what your IP address is, plugs that in, and restarts Asterisk. Let's see. How is the quality of the TSDN connectivity compared to some of the pay-for SIP providers? Well, so for one, it's not a pay-for SIP provider, so it's not guaranteed, so it may be really bad at any given point in time. But in practice, it's actually been really good. If anybody's ever tried to go to google.com, it always comes up really fast. It's one of the speediest websites in the entire world because Google has a massive deployment of connectivity, right? They're everywhere. So usually the calls that you're making across Google Voice or Google Talk are fantastic. Where can I find the wiki? The wiki is at wiki.asterisk.org. If the client is FRing using Google Talk add-ons, we can only send DTMF dial extension, not the IVTR. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with FRing, and really IVTR is just kind of it's a very hacky thing that's a bit humorous. But it's the only way for somebody sitting in the web browser to actually send events to Asterisk, right? All you can do is send text to Asterisk. You can't send DTMF because you don't have any to send. All right. If you use the Google Talk setup, how would someone call you from a landline? So if you're using Google Talk as a setup and you want somebody to call you from a landline, then the easiest way to do that is to use Google Voice also and get a US 10-number DID from Google, and that doesn't cost anything. They just give it to you. It's free. So once you've got that, then you can tie that DID into your Google Chat connectivity, right? So if anybody calls that DID and you're logged into your web browser, it'll just it'll show up as a call coming into your web browser if you've configured Google Voice that way. Inside of Google Voice, you can define what phone or what device you want to ring. So you just set Google Chat. And when you do that, if you're logged into your web browser, the calls go to your web browser, and if Asterisk is logged in, then the calls go to Asterisk. Somebody making a comparison about PowerPoint and Keynote and graphical user interfaces. Thank you, Mr. Stapleton. Do you have any documentation or help to configure Asterisk with Microsoft Link? No, I do not. There are some people out there on the internet that have been doing that, so you're probably just going to have to Google around for it. You're going to have to connect Asterisk to Link using TCP. I do know that much, and by default, TCP connectivity is turned off in SIP.conf, so you're going to have to turn that on. Which codec does Gmail use? So G711 MULAW is the one that you're going to see moving around most of the time. Google does support another one called G711.1. It's enhanced G711, but that codec is not supported in Asterisk. It's a proprietary royalty-based codec, and Digium does not see the need to go out and try to license that codec because it's not that commonly used. What about connecting to IP multimedia systems, for example, OpenIMS Core? I don't know enough about that question to respond to it, and I think that kind of question is reasonably off topic for what we're talking about here. So you may want to try that question on the Asterisk forums and get somebody there to start talking with you about how to connect Asterisk to whatever platform you've got there. A point from Mr. Mundy, with D-Link routers you don't have to worry about NAT and external IP. Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Let's see, are there specific ports you need to open for Gtalk to connect to Asterisk? I'll reference the previous question from Ward. If you have a really terrible router, and what defines terrible, I have no idea, one that doesn't work defines terrible, then you may have to. So the port to consider is the port, I think it's 5222 in the configuration file. Let's see, hold on. In the Jabber configuration file. Yeah, 5222. And then for RTP, you're going to want to make sure that you've got ports open for RTP as well, because the audio, even though the signaling is done over XMPP, the audio is still moved over RTP. So that's just like, just like SIP, right? For the external IP, is external host supported instead, like it is in SIP_nat.conf? I think external host is supported, but I am not sure off the top of my head. If you drop me an email about that one, I can get you an answer. So malcolmd@gmail.com or malcolmd@digium.com. Gtalk channel breaks the technology channel name session ID naming convention. Will that be fixed? The answer to that is probably not, unless there's a great reason for us to fix it. So the connectivity to Google is just kind of a fun thing, and if Google ever shuts it down, then work that we did, doesn't have any value carrying forward. So we're probably going to leave it just like it is, because it's not really hurting anybody. General question not related to the current topic. If somebody wants to process 1,000 a second, I'm not sure what they're talking about. Maybe it's 1,000 calls a second. How can they handle this? That's a whole lot of calls. You may want to look into a giant farm of SIP proxies to handle 1,000 calls a second, because that's tough. Do I know if the WRT works? And it's a point to the WRT version from Super Mario's World log. I do not know if that works. You'd have to contact that particular person. So at Digium, we didn't do any development of this on embedded platforms of any kind, because that wasn't our target. We just wanted to make sure that it worked on x86 and x86-64. So if anybody else out there has made it work or has run into any issues running on an embedded platform, that's kind of their deal. Patches are welcome, though. So if you do run into a problem running on an embedded platform and you've got a patch, you can post it to the issue tracker at issues.asterisk.org, and we can work on getting that included into a future version of Asterisk. But Digium ourselves don't really we don't have any need or desire to make it run on any other platforms. Yeah, 1,000 calls per second. Off topic, is the version 1.8 of Asterisk already pre-compiled H323 by NewPhone? So the original H323, Chan H323 that's in Asterisk 1.8, that one, the original one from NewPhone is still there. It's not pre-compiled. Nothing in Asterisk is pre-compiled. I'm a startup and would like to know if this is going to be able to be used in Central America. You'd have to, well, you can make the connection to Google from wherever you are. You can't sign up for a DID unless you're coming from a North American-based IP address. And I don't know if Google is planning to roll this out anywhere else, at least the free portion of it. Now, the actual calling portion of it, right, Google will let you call out to any place in the world. I don't know if they offer international DIDs, though. It's not, that doesn't preclude you from using the capabilities of Google Chat or anything like that. Let's see, this is a long one. Okay. Any real-world experience with regard to efficiency of the media path for inbound calls to Google Voice numbers? For example, call media slingshotted to California and back with a New York caller called a geographic New York Google Voice DID. Actually, it's from, let's see. Yes, it's from Mr. Fife. No, I have not attempted to actually inspect where the packets are going. And certainly not from person to person. They just go up into the big giant Google Cloud, and then they get delivered magically to wherever it is they're supposed to go. So I do not have any advice there, other than it just seems to work really well. This question says, I may have missed this in the slide, sorry, what caller ID shows up when you make calls to PSTN using the Jabber connection? Does it use the caller ID of your SIP peer or something Google says? It uses the caller ID of your Google Voice account, and it's the same thing when you're sending SMS messages. The caller ID that shows up for the called party on the PSTN side, which whatever that is, they're going to see you as your Google Voice caller ID number. Yes, automagic. Okay, I think I've gotten all of the questions. Oh, there's another one. Why most of the time does the Nokia SIP client not register unless you remove the password? I do not know the answer to that. I'm sorry. Okay. Lots of your welcomes to the people who have said thank you. I do not have any more questions right now, though. That's actually the end of the list of questions. So unless anybody has any more, wait a few seconds. All right. So unless anybody's got any more, I'm actually going to turn it back over to Steve. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attendance today, and thanks for the wonderful questions. And I hope that this is something that you guys can use and that it's fun.
Excellent. Malcolm, thank you very much for doing this. This has been a really good presentation. I think it's been a great way of kicking off the Asterisk Tech Tips series, because we're going to be doing several of these. We are looking for suggestions from the audience as to what would make a good Tech Tips topic. So it needs to be something that's more than just 5 minutes worth of here, quick, do this. It's got to be actually, like you saw today, something that we can turn into a pretty good presentation that kind of explains in depth how to go about doing something really cool with Asterisk. It doesn't have to be necessarily dial plan related. If you've got something that's security related, routing related, really sort of any topic that would be of interest to the Asterisk user community, please go ahead and send that to us. You can send it back to the PLM address from the GoToWebinar setup, or you can send them directly to me. I'm ssokol@digium.com, and we will go ahead and take those into consideration. If anybody out there would like to volunteer to be a presenter at an Asterisk Tech Tips event, we're looking for those as well. So please go ahead and send me your proposal, and we'll be happy to figure out what we can do. We're looking forward to doing a number of these. Probably be 2 weeks before we hit another one. And we may bring Malcolm back. I think he's got another one partway done in the can, so hold on for that, and I'll have something up hopefully in the next few days on our website about it. But thanks, everybody, again. Great seeing you. We're looking forward to having many more of these, and we look forward to hearing from you if you've got ideas. Malcolm, have a great day.